Hello everyone, my name is Rajesh Kumar and I'm your DevOps SRE DevSecOps coach. I have close to 18 plus years of experience working in multiple MNCs around the globe and having in-depth knowledge of DevOps, SRE and DevSecOps. So I would like to introduce you one certification program in a DevOps, and that is we call it DevOps Certified Professional. Now this is a 2 months of program, 25 tools of DevOps you will learn, and apart from that you will also get the access to the LMS, lifetime access to the videos portal. It's a certification program, and you will have 25 assignments and 2 projects along with it. It's a completely weekend program, so here you have classes on Saturday and Sunday. So as part of this course, you will learn multiple things. Here you see that you will learn Linux, AWS, Docker, Jira, Confluence, Python, Git with GitHub, SonarQube, Maven, Gradle, Packer, Artifactory, Selenium, JMeter, Ansible, Kubernetes, Helm, Terraform, Jenkins, Datadog, Splunk, and Neuralink. Now, how do we, apply for this? So how can you reach out to us? So you have a WhatsApp number and email ID. So please reach out to us, and we'll help you to onboard this program. Apart from this DevOps certified professional programs, we are offering other certifications as well in a DevSecOps, SRE, and one of the very comprehensive programs which we have is in Master in DevOps Engineering. Yeah, so feel free to get in touch with us and then enroll for it. Thank you.
Yeah. So after deploying the Rancher server using a Docker container, let's try to understand that what are the things we need to consider before start deploying for the production grade. Okay, so as part of this discussion, we are going to discuss about the deploying Rancher, managing Rancher, deploying Kubernetes with Rancher, and managing Kubernetes with Rancher. The demo was primarily focused around Docker, but we'll have a discussion on with this context of Kubernetes. So, what are the requirements for Rancher to deploy? Before you start deploying, you need to consider some of the prerequisite for it. So, first of all, that Rancher works with any modern Linux distro, supports 64-bit x86 AMD architecture, not ARM. Now, for the container runtime, we need Docker, and Rancher support any Docker compatible container runtime such as Containerd also. Ingress, we can use you know uh, something like mini controllers. So one of the open source Ingress controller we can use it, which is Nginx, which is a very powerful. But again, many options are available. You can consider that one. So each Kubernetes node that's running Rancher should run an Ingress as a daemon set, and manage Kubernetes clusters such as EKS and require you to set up Ingress. A disk, again, Rancher performance depends on the etcd in the KH clusters. So performance SSD disk are recommended for backing the Rancher management Kubernetes cluster. And networking depends again your use cases. It recommends that each Kubernetes node have a static IP or a DSCP reservation if static IP is not possible. So these are some of the Rancher's requirement which we have. In terms of CPU and RAM, because I was able to do very small setup with a 2 CPU, 8 GB RAM, but depends on your requirement, you can increase that. So in this setup right now, which I did, 2 CPU, 8 GB RAM, I can manage up to 150 clusters by the way. Okay, that's the smallest one. And the nodes, how many nodes you can manage? Up to 1,500 nodes you can manage it. So some of the requirements from this year. Some of the port requirement, yeah. Kubernetes port requirement, that's a separate thing, but yeah. Here you have a list of port requirement. Let me tell you here one more thing. In the ranches in a Kubernetes session, I taught you how to set up a Kubernetes clusters using init command. But I did not cover that. What are the other options available with the init? Means you can set the networking, you can set a port, you can set a node port specification, many things you can set along with the kubeadm init command. So here you can see that all the options for the different board. For the this is useful for the production, not for the learning purpose. And so now, yeah, so I discuss multiple times. You can deploy in the container, cloud, Kubernetes, SUSE hosted also you can do that. Okay, how do you deploy? So manually I did that last option, but you can deploy through Helm, you can deploy through the Terraform, you can deploy through the Vagrant also. So multiple options are there. Now, most common cloud deployment method for Azure is Helm. So Helm you can do with the AKS, GKE, and manage Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so which are the tools we're going to interact with it? So some of the tools which you know that kubectl, we know that Helm, we know that, you know, and some certificate you need it, which you have it, and VMs you need it, bare servers also you can use, cloud managed services also you can use. So these are the prerequisite for this. So yeah, these are the whole steps which you have in order to deploy the Rancher in Kubernetes clusters. So step number one, add the Helm chart repo to your Kubernetes clusters. That's a chart here. Step number two, create a namespace for Rancher. This is for the Kubernetes, by the way. Okay. And then command is there. Then choose the SSL options which you want. And then after that, fourth, install cert manager. Fifth, install Rancher with Helm and cert options. And last one, verify the Rancher is successfully deployed. All the in between the commands are there. I'll share the blocks with you. All these commands is mentioned step by step. Okay, so deploying I have already demoed it. And so how do we manage the Rancher? So first thing, authentication versus authorization. Who are you? What can you do with it? So how do we set the authentication and authorization at Rancher? So that you can do it. Let me show you some UI before that. So look at this. Here you see home, and here you see users and authentications. Okay. So this is the place you can set the authentications and authorizations. So users, you can add a number of users. Groups, which will have a number of multiple people, multiple users, you can add in a group. And roles here you can create, which is something similar to RBAC in of Kubernetes. So you can create a role, assign access to the cluster or namespace also. So both you can do it here. And authentications you can enable using here auth provider. So these are the authentication is enabled by default. It's a local is enabled. Local means user ID and password. So that is something which is here. Admin is username and password, which I copy pasted somewhere here while setting up. You hope you remember. So you can enable this active directory and open LDAP, Azure, Google, Okta. Okta is used many places for uh, two two MFA, multi-factor authentication. So like that. So same thing I'm discussing right now. So just a second. Yeah. So authentication in Rancher. So yep. How authentication works in Rancher. So Rancher add centralized user authentication to your Kubernetes cluster. It also brings the ability to utilize the single set of credentials to authenticate with any number of Kubernetes cluster. Rancher authentication proxy power the centralized user authentications. The Rancher authentication proxy authenticates user, then forward request they have to downstream Kubernetes cluster utilizing the service account. So here third point is important. When you try to authenticate to the Rancher, so it's authenticate through the authentication proxy, and after that, when you send any command to the downstream clusters, which is created through the Rancher, so that request is served through the service account, which is available in the each cluster. So please remember that. Rancher has local or external authentication. Local, I'm using it. External, I was showing you. Rancher defaults to local authentication unless external is being configured. With external authentication, user and group are used. These determine who is allowed to log into the Rancher, user and group, which I showed you before that, and what resources a user can access can be via RBAC. RBAC, anyone have idea about the RBAC? Anyone? It's the same RBAC which we discussed in the Kubernetes section, role-based access control. I hope you remember that we create a rules, we create a user service account group, and then we manage the resources. Okay, so these are the
Yes.
authentication options are available. And if you want to configure it, you have options to do that. Authorization in Rancher, that is done through uh, RBAC primarily. So once the user log in with the Rancher, their authorization or their access rights within the system is determined by the global permissions and clusters and project roles. So three things: global permissions, clusters, and project roles. So here, if you see that, uh, go to global setting. Mm, just here, and this is the local, which is default, and click on this, and here you have set the for the global settings. So global permission, here you see this user is administrator and has all the permission. Cluster rules, project rules you can say is like a namespace level. Cluster rules you can say you can set it at a cluster level, and which are the resources you can do, what you can do, and all. You have all the stuff. So this is something which you need to remember that. Okay, so users and group. I think this is very simple to understand. Here you can create a user. Let's say Raju. Here some password, you can generate some password also. And after this, the user password Raju. And what permission you want him to assign. So this is our global permissions. So you can assign as administrator, restricted administrator, standard user. And you see, you should read this all stuff. And some of the built-in rules are defined. These are not I have created. This is given by Rancher. You can create your own rule, by the way. So these are the built-in rule. So what this user Raju should be a part of, which role, which role, which kind of access you're assigning it, you can give it to this and create. Done. Now here you can create a group. Okay, there's no group to show. So right now this group, creation of the group is available with only external auth. A local authorization does not support the group, so this is the one. Roles you can create it as many you want, and here you can decide the role. These are the global rule available by Rancher. These are the uh, rules for the clusters, rules for the project namespace. So these are created actually. If you want, you can create your own also. So here you create a global rule. Here you create a cluster rule. Here you can create a rule for the project. So if you want to give access at the project level, as of now, I don't have any namespace right now, but cluster level also you can give it, and global level also you can give it. So here G role, global role, and here is this the default role? No, all this thing. What resources? So verbs means read, write, I mean whatever, create, delete, get, list, patch, update, watch. What resources here? Pod, service, all this thing you can select. API groups. So if you remember that this all this thing I'm doing through UI. Same thing you have done through the YAML file also while creating the roles. Anyone remember that while working the role? So what we call it, this is a global rule uh, for the Kubernetes, sorry, Rancher. But what kind of rule we have in Kubernetes? Anyone have idea? Hello, in Kubernetes, what kind
So
of
you
rule we
mean
have?
roles and role bindings,
No, no, no. There's a two types of rule we have in Kubernetes.
cluster roles
And
and normal.
ha,
Mm,
cluster roles and role itself. So here role is
yeah.
here. This is the one. And cluster rule is this is the one. And now Rancher has a global rule also. So this is the one. So all this thing you are, whatever you did through the UI, I mean, so YAML file, you are doing through the UI in Rancher. That's all. So you can define this one also.
If you would have any issues with our channel membership, you can drop an email to us at contact@devopsschool.com, or you can also unsubscribe from channel membership anytime if you don't want to continue or did not like the video.
Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries. We will reply to them at the earliest.
Thanks for watching.